One arrogant wife, one quiet maid, and a single cruel laugh. What happened moments later flipped the balance of power in the most unexpected way.
The afternoon sun spilled through the tall glass windows of the mansion, painting the marble floor with golden streaks. The air smelled faintly of lilies, freshly arranged in crystal vases. In the dining hall, a young black woman moved with quiet precision, her hands polishing silverware until it gleamed like mirrors. Every motion was deliberate, gentle, practiced. Yet there was a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself, as though her work was not a burden, but a reflection of her own discipline. The silence broke with the click of high heels on marble. Entering the room was the billionaire's wife, her figure draped in a flowing designer gown that shimmered with every step. Diamonds caught the light at her throat, and her smile was sharp, almost theatrical. She walked as though the room itself bowed to her presence, her posture a display of untouchable superiority. Her eyes swept across the polished table, then fixed on the maid. A faint smirk curled her lips, half amusement, half disdain. The contrast between them was striking. One woman cloaked in wealth and arrogance, the other wrapped in humility and quiet strength. In that instant, the stage was set for something neither could yet imagine. The wife's laughter rang out, sharp and echoing against the high ceiling. She leaned against the doorway, her jeweled fingers brushing her lips as if to hide the cruelty spilling from them. "Look at you," she scoffed, her voice dripping with mockery. "That uniform? Those shoes. Did you borrow them from a thrift store? And that accent, so terribly provincial. No wonder you'll never be more than a maid." The young woman did not flinch. Her hands continued polishing, her posture straight, her movement steady. Yet in her dark eyes, a flicker of pain betrayed the sting of those words. She lowered her gaze briefly, then whispered something softly, almost to herself. One day, truth has a way of finding its voice. The wife frowned, confused by the quiet remark, but brushed it off with another laugh. As the maid stepped away to arrange the lilies, her elegance became undeniable. She moved with a poise that seemed misplaced in servitude, her diction unusually refined when she spoke. Her eyes lingered on a stack of business papers left carelessly on the table, noticing details with quiet interest. Something about her presence felt out of place. Too graceful, too composed, for someone the wife thought she had already measured. The sound of a heavy door opening echoed through the mansion, followed by the measured footsteps of authority. The billionaire had returned earlier than expected, his presence filling the air long before he entered the room. He paused at the edge of the dining hall, catching the last notes of his wife's laughter and the sharp edges of her ridicule. His brow furrowed, though he said nothing at first. Then his gaze found the maid. A warmth lit his face, so different from the chill his wife projected. "Clara," he greeted, his deep voice rich with familiarity. "I've been meaning to ask, what do you think about the new proposal for the Riverside project?" The wife's smile froze, her eyes darting between them in disbelief. "Clara, he knows her name?" The young woman straightened, no longer just a silent servant. With calm assurance, she set aside the silverware and spoke clearly, her words crisp and precise. She outlined the strengths of the project, then pointed out a flaw in the market strategy, suggesting an alternative that reflected both intelligence and vision. Her voice carried confidence, her insight undeniable. The billionaire nodded thoughtfully, while his wife stood paralyzed, her world shifting in ways she could not yet grasp. Later that week, the grand conference room buzzed with the quiet murmur of executives. Glass walls framed the city skyline, and on the long, polished table lay files worth millions. The billionaire entered with steady confidence, his wife trailing behind, her eyes darting curiously. But it was the presence of the maid, dressed now in a tailored suit instead of her uniform, that drew stunned glances from the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," the billionaire began, his tone firm, "allow me to introduce someone who has been quietly shaping our vision for years." He turned toward her with respect that carried weight. "Clara is not just a maid. She is my advisor, my silent investor, and as of today, my official business partner." Gasps rippled through the room. The woman once dismissed as invisible now commanded every gaze. Clara spoke with calm eloquence, outlining strategies she had devised, her voice steady and brilliant. Executives nodded, recognizing the genius behind the empire's recent successes. The billionaire's wife sat frozen, her painted smile collapsing into disbelief. Only days ago she had laughed at Clara's clothes, her accent, her very existence. Now, shame burned hotter than any diamond she wore. The balance of power had shifted, forever. Silence filled the room, heavy and unrelenting. The billionaire's wife shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her jeweled hands fidgeting against the leather armrest. For the first time, her voice failed her. No cutting remark, no mocking laughter. She could only sit and watch as the woman she once ridiculed now stood at the center of admiration. Clara held her ground with quiet strength, her shoulders squared, her gaze unwavering. No uniform bound her now, only the unmistakable aura of dignity and intelligence. She spoke briefly, thanking the team for their trust, her words measured yet filled with conviction. Every syllable erased the image of the maid and replaced it with the undeniable presence of a leader. The billionaire's voice broke the silence. "Let this be a lesson," he said, his tone commanding yet calm. "Respect should never depend on wealth, titles, or appearances. True worth lies in character, wisdom, and vision, and Clara embodies all of these." Heads around the table nodded in agreement. The wife lowered her eyes, shame pressing against her like a weight. What she had once dismissed now stood as a force beside her husband. The truth was clear. Brilliance can be hidden but never silenced. As the meeting concluded and the executives filed out, a quiet stillness lingered in the room. The billionaire's wife sat in silence, her once bright confidence dimmed by the weight of realization. Across from her, Clara stood tall, the afternoon, light pouring through the glass walls and crowning her in a glow that seemed almost symbolic. No longer the unseen maid, she was revealed for who she truly was, a woman of brilliance, resilience, and vision. The staff who had once passed her without notice now looked upon her with admiration, their respect genuine and unforced. It was as if the walls of the mansion and the titles of wealth had crumbled, leaving only the undeniable truth. Greatness wears many faces, and it cannot be hidden forever. The billionaire's voice lingered in the air, steady and resolute. Never judge someone by the role they seem to play. Greatness often hides in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to shine. The words etched themselves into the silence, into the hearts of all who heard. And as Clara met the eyes of the woman who once mocked her, there was no bitterness, only quiet triumph. Dignity had spoken louder than ridicule ever could.